Folks, questions from you. There's been some great stuff here from the three athletes. Burning questions. Are there any? There's a couple of mics kicking about here somewhere, I'm sure. Great opportunity to... There's one just behind you there.
Hi guys. David, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your... I'm here. A little bit about what's next for you.
Sorry, I'm just coughing. After winning the medal, I made the mistake of going and having a bottle of champagne, which I don't recommend to anyone because no rational decisions are made on champagne. And at that point, I decided I was going to take a couple of years out of sport and cycle around the world for charity and hopefully be the first Paralympian to cycle around the world. And I set off in end of March, start of April next year for a charity called Coming Home, which is to cater for the injured servicemen in Afghanistan. It's a sister charity to Help the Heroes, where Help the Heroes deals with the prosthetics and their initial rehab. Coming Home helps with integration into civilian life and also in homes. It costs £200,000 to adapt a home to someone who's lost limbs. So this charity is specifically set up for those people.
Brilliant.
Excuse me.
More questions? Any more? Yep.
To any of the panel, really. I'm just wondering how your school sport experience was, how competitive it was, and whether that really helped your development or whether it hindered it if it wasn't particularly competitive, and how you felt about that.
Do you want to have a quick go at it? Just all of you have a quick go. Laura, you want to start?
So the question being how competitive was within my sport. Yeah, I mean, obviously there was a squad of 28 and only 16 get picked. So you can imagine how competitive within a team sport actually that is, especially girls. So in order for the selection process, there was a traffic light system. So every 3 months you would be reviewed. And if you weren't basically making the marks, of the selection process, you were asked to leave the programme. So in terms of competitiveness within the squad itself, it was a lot. But in terms of the actual Olympics with other teams, do you mean as well?
What about school?
Your school experience of competitive sports?
Yeah, so at school.
When you were actually at school,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, at school I was really competitive as an individual. But I think it's ingrown in yourself. So I always wanted to win, I always wanted to achieve, I always wanted to push myself to the potential, and I don't think that everyone perhaps has that competitiveness in them. So every Saturday we would have our hockey matches, and I was always the one that was really wanting to win, really determined, and just loved a Saturday morning because I knew I would be playing a hockey game. But I think again that is really in yourself if you want to achieve that. I don't think you can coach it, but I do think there's the bit in yourself if you want to really push yourself and have that competitive streak in you.
It was right for you, so that suited your style.
Yeah,
David, what was your school sport experience?
So long ago, I can't remember. I'm that old.
I could compete on that.
Growing up in Aviemore, again, we did everything up there. I spent more time at school than I did doing sport, actually at school than actually studying. Again, it's like you say, it's an ingrained thing. I think athletes have it. It's something you're just born with, that will to win. But I just loved doing all sports, and I just loved it, and I loved participating in anything that was sort of got me outdoors and got me in the mountains. But I did always have that little burning desire inside me that wanted to win, and I guess in a lot of ways you're born with that, and it's about nurturing it when you find it.
Your experience, Craig, at school in terms of sport at school,
yeah,
how
well,
competitive was it?
It was a shame because, especially in my primary school, we didn't even have a swimming pool. So I think during the 7 years I was at, during the 7 years I was at primary school, I think we swam once or twice maybe. I mean, so obviously, I mean that wasn't great, and I never really got to show off. But so yeah, but obviously. I couldn't really judge the competitiveness within the swimming, but when it came to other sports, I mean, I mean, we all used to have especially football matches. We'd all get involved, and it would get so competitive that people would be, especially over lunchtime, we'd be skipping out eating lunch just so we wouldn't lose any players and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, definitely, I think that being competitive in school sport is really important. Well, it was for me anyway, because it helped me to be more competitive later on in life.
Yeah. More questions? A couple more? Great opportunity, don't get too many opportunities like this. Robbie? Oh, there's another one over here. Dougie's beat you.
Hi there. You've all been really inspiring today, as have many of the other speakers. Who inspires you? Who's your role model at the moment, or has been a role model for you in the past?
Laura?
I struggle with that question because no one particularly has been a role model for me. I mean, growing up, I just loved playing sport. I'm really competitive, and I just always wanted to push myself to see the potentials that I could reach. So in terms of answering your question, there's no one in particular role model for me that I inspired to be and really helped me through my journey in my sport.
Craig, you got anybody there that...
Yeah, I mean, I'm just motivated by so many different people throughout my career. I remember watching the Beijing Olympics, and as you probably know, like Michael Phelps winning the 8 Olympic golds, and I remember watching that when I was younger and just thinking that's absolutely unbelievable, and I want to be there. I want to witness people do things like that, and that inspired me onto swimming, and yeah, and then even more recently, like speaking to Cameron Vanderberg, and then seeing teammate and friend Michael Jamieson winning silver in the 200 breaststroke, which, like, watching him do that in front of your own eyes, I mean, was something, like, it was just incredible. And to see him on the podium and how happy and proud his family were, it really motivates me. Like, every day I want to be doing what he's doing, so.
Brilliant. Robbie?
Yeah, it was just to say we've obviously had a lot of very inspiring young people here who will hopefully inspire their own peers, but what do you see as your role in inspiring young people, and do you have any formal capacities? I know a lot of you have been involved in Young Ambassadors, delivering that, but going forwards, where do you see yourselves inspiring the young generation, the next generation?
Craig, you want to have a go at that?
Yeah, well, I mean, inspiring the younger generation is so important. I mean, it was the Inspire a Generation was the motto of the London Olympics, and yeah, I mean, it's so important to get young people involved in sport, even if they're not going to be world-class Olympic athletes. I mean, it teaches you so many life skills like punctuality, determination, enthusiasm, dedication, which, like, not only do you need them in sport, but you need them in the workplace, you need them in life. So, yeah, I mean, you definitely, getting people involved in sport at a young age is so important, I think.
David, you got a role model?
Again, it's like what Craig said, there's so many, even just coming here today and stepping onto the track, and I think it's, as an athlete, and you're constantly inspired by fellow athletes and what you see every day within a training environment. I don't have one particular role model or anything. I was even inspired by a young ambassador this year at one of the young ambassador conferences in Aberdeen. I had a 15-year-old kid tell me about his future plans as a triathlete and everything, and I went away from there going, oh my God, that's amazing, and I got to get trained again. And I think, and that's the beauty of sport. That's what sport does. It is like you say, Gray, it inspires a generation, and I think that's why we're so privileged to be in such an amazing thing.
Got time for another couple of questions, but what I'd said to the athletes earlier on is that if they could finish with a message to me as Chief Executive Sport Scotland, to us as a sector, I think that'd be really interesting. So they've got a great shot at that right now. But is there another couple of questions, or another question that we could, Dougie?
Yeah, we all work in sport on a day-to-day basis, and local level, national level as well. You guys obviously got to the top of your game, which is fantastic, through a variety of means, whether it's school sport or a variety of different sports or club sport and so on. If there was one thing in Scottish sport that you could change, what would it be? It could be at any level, not necessarily at the performance end, but any level at all.
Is there another question? We'll let them think about that one. One more question, and we'll get the message.
Something a bit more light-hearted. Have you got any funny stories or moments from the Athletes' Village? And if you've got any names as well, then that'd be even better.
Is there another question? Any funny stories or anything you would change in Scottish sport?
I think with Scottish sport, I think it's just the mentality of individuals and just realising that anything, I'm not reaching, but anything is possible. It really is. Like at a young age, obviously you dream of playing in an Olympic Games or participating at the top of your sport and whatever that might be. It's also just having the mindset that you can do it and not giving up too easily, and just people having the belief in themselves that if they push themselves to the limits, that anything is possible.
Sorry as well, I think if you'd asked me that question maybe 5-10 years ago, I could have come up and said what we're sitting in today. I think for sure to see this is a phenomenal setup, and it's so accessible. You go down to the cycling track and you've got people just coming in and using it, which I think is great. So I would say build on what this is. And
Yep. Mate, it's fantastic. These are iconic facilities. A number of people have mentioned it today. So a little message to finish with from each of you for me and for the rest of the workforce here. What would that be? Craig, you can have a go first.
Yeah, well, I mean, today was about inspiring young people and keeping them involved in sport, and I think what really helped me to stay in my sport during the rough times was the coaches communicating with the families, like my parents and my school as well. It was so important for me so that my parents knew what the commitment was that they had to obviously undertake, and I think them knowing the role was so important, and also like the coaches letting the schools know. I mean, I chose to do 4 hires instead of 5 to make school a lot more manageable. I let the school know that I might be in late sometimes after training in the morning, and it made life a lot easier. So I definitely think that communication between the sport and your life is probably really important for me.
That's a brilliant message, actually. It's a really strong one, and that connection to what you're doing and how sympathetic different parts of your life can actually be towards your personal goals. I think that's a strong one. That's clocked. David?
No pressure. Yeah, I would go with don't forget what's happened this year. London was great. It was a great games, and it's easy for us to forget and move on from it and focus on our things. I think take what the great things were of those games and keep pushing forward. We've got the Commonwealth Games here. Hopefully we might even have the Youth Olympics here, but it doesn't end then. And I think certainly from being the north of Scotland and Aviemore, and you know, I'm not saying we get forgot about way up north, but it's, you know, we rely on the volunteers and we rely on lots of people to make those clubs happen, and it's give those people the support, and give the schools the support, and just do what you do already. It's working, and you know, don't lose that passion. Keep the passion, keep the dream, and don't forget what happened this summer. And
Yep. Laura?
My message is pretty simple. I think kids just need to enjoy what they're doing. If they don't enjoy participating in the sport that they want to compete in, then they're not going to make the sacrifices, they're not going to make the commitment to it. So for me, as long as they're smiling and enjoying what they do, then anything's possible.
Great. Well, it just falls to me to say thanks to the three of you. It certainly was inspirational watching all of you, although I must admit I saw your game against China. Quick phone call to the Japanese to help you out was probably the one where I felt really bad for you at that point, but it was inspirational watching it on TV. I was lucky enough to beat a few things. I hope you have a great time in Rio, and I hope you realise your dreams and get one of these medals that these guys have got. You've inspired us today in that conversation. Really appreciate the time you've given for that. Thank you very much.